Hey Sugar Double O, or Ignatius Sands. I'm here to tell you about a motif in a movie. So, for my movie, I chose Slumdog Millionaire. So basically, the movie Slumdog Millionaire, the main character Jamal Malik, he went through a ton of stuff in his past which indirectly led him to the answers to questions that he eventually in the future while on won't be a millionaire. So this video, I'm going to talk about the motif that I've seen throughout the work of this movie, and with the help of articles, talk about how it relates. There's an online blog article that I read by author C.S. Lacking. She talks about how motifs tie into the theme of stories. Technically, she was talking about novels and not movies, but when you think about it, the same things can still kind of apply across platforms and whatnot. So she used the popular book To Kill a Mockingbird, and for her example, she talked about how the title itself represents innocence and how killing a person destroys that innocence of a person, and this ties into the novel's themes such as dealing with guilt versus innocence. Another online blog article, it talks about the connection between trees, Christmas, and life. And in this article, it briefly talks about how connections between life and things that seem small and insignificant to us play a much bigger role than what we think. And I say this is seen in Slumdog Millionaire because when he's talking about his life and the flashbacks, it shows things that happened to him. And these things that happened to him in his past, it makes a connection to something which he would use later on in the future, whether he knew it or not. Which, by the time he got to the game show, all his experiences and the events that happened to him, they all play a role and are connected to the spot where he's at in the future, and basically it helps him out when the game show. One of these examples that I would like to point out in this is when he was younger, him and his friends, they kind of saw themselves as the Three Musketeers and whatnot, which the Three Musketeers was a book that they were supposed to be studying in school, even though they weren't necessarily paying attention to it, but it was a book that they were studying. And this makes a connection to the future when the last question that main character Jamal is asked is actually the name of the third musketeer. That's just one connection. It's one little example of how the something from his past made a connection to in the future. Follow this discussion along. Another article I read on a site called WiseKey, the author explains in brief the difference between a motif and a theme. A theme is like a main idea or the general idea behind a work, and it is constantly reinforced by like the characters or events that go on in the movie or book or whatever have you or whatnot. The motif is an event or an image. Image metaphorically speaking, or it could literally be an actual image in the book or movie. This event or image is something that is used to actually reinforce the theme of the movie or book, and it draws attention to the viewer. Another article on the site Cliff Notes, an author talks about how the reoccurrence of motifs are so frequent that they actually enhance the meaning of the work, and they often rise to symbolic importance, meaning that they show up so much that they actually have an importance to the story. One example I guess I'm going to use is I Am Legend. There was constantly butterflies flying into the movie now. It was years ago since I've seen the movie, so I'll probably watch it again. But so I'm not necessarily sure what the butterfly really means, but it was just an example I thought of. So that this is one thing, the butterfly constantly showed up through the movie. The butterfly, that was something that was reoccurring, and it had an importance, and there's really more than one motif in or whatnot, and one article suggests that the more times you read a story or a novel, and I'm going to also assume that this works for movies, like I said, it's still the same thing, but the more you read or watch a movie or whatnot, the viewers will pick up on something else they didn't pick up before. And they're going to notice and they'll be like, aha, I didn't notice this before. Another amazing way I like how C.S. Lakin, she describes a motif as a splash of color. And what she means by a splash of color is like something that kind of like blends in, like color in a painting. A good example I can say of this is in English class when you have to write, you're doing a vocabulary test and you have to write vocab words into sentences. There's going to be some students that just like randomly write 20 of the vocab words in one sentence and it makes no sense, but they're like, well, I'm filling the requirements, so that's it. But then you're going to have those some students who are going to beautifully craft the vocabulary words in the sentence, and the whole thing will just flow just like water. That is what Lakin is talking about. He's saying some motifs that if you do them just right, it flows straight with the story and it's not like something that's forced. Now there's also another article I read. What they called the motif was the same thing that it's like the same thing that I'm talking about, but they gave it a different name. They called it fate. I call it connection of life because I think it fits more for this movie. Basically what they were saying, they were talking about if Jamal wouldn't have lost his mom and wouldn't have left home, his life could have been different. And his life could have been different, could have been a good thing or a bad thing, because say if his life was different and he still wanted to win the game show, if he would have went through the experiences that he had in life, would he have known the answers to the questions in his game? What happened in his past made connections to stuff in his future. He still served his purpose and it helped him become a millionaire. My whole point is that the motif that I call connection of life, it takes, little small things that would seem almost insignificant to people now, and it's a motif that shows how things in life that even though they can seem small and insignificant are important in some form of fashion, and that's my whole point. So Big Mocker, this is H Trader 00. That's my motif.